I'm adding to my life. And later on this particular month, we'll look at that famous passage of scripture that says that when I give, it shall be given to me, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. It is exactly what we are saying at this particular moment, and that is that when I give, it'll be added to me. That when the world says that I'm subtracted to my life, God says I'm added to my life. But one of the problems that we have as it relates to this idea of giving is that we have to set our priorities straight. When people say that I don't have it to give, that it's hard for me to tithe, it's hard for me to give, it's hard for me to give over and above, it's simply because my priorities are not right. Because it ain't hard for you to pay your car note. It ain't hard for you to pay your house note. It ain't hard for you to go shop at the mall. It ain't hard for you to do that. Why is it not hard for me to do those things? But why is it not hard for me to do those things? Because when my priorities are wrong, it allows me to be able to do those things that are outside of God's will, and it's hard for me to do the things inside of God's will. So what does God want us to do this particular month, in this particular series? He wants us to align our priorities in line with Him. He said for us to seek first the kingdom of God and all of His righteousness, and all of these things will be added unto you. Let me just jump right into this. There's a story of 5 men who escaped prison. They escaped prison by hijacking a hot air balloon. The balloon rise in the air, and the wind began to blow the balloon over the ocean. And for hours had passed. And they began to notice that the hot air balloon began to fall to the surface of the ocean. The men soon realized that if they didn't get rid of some of the weight, that they weren't going to make it to land. So they decided that all non-essential items should be thrown overboard. So they threw their shoes overboard. They threw their overcoats overboard. They threw their weapons overboard. And soon the hot air balloon began to rise once again. Sooner or later, the balloon that rise began to fall once again. And then they decided that we needed to toss the food over, because they said we would rather be starving and in the air, rather than being full in the ocean. So they threw their food overboard, and as you guessed it, the balloon began to move up in the air again. Continue to go higher and higher, but then it began to fall once again. They've thrown all the non-essentials over, threw their items over, their coats, their overcoats, their weapons. They've thrown their food over. Somebody had wisely said in the balloon, let's cut the basket out and tie a rope around us and allow the balloon to carry us to land. And they began to cut the basket piece by piece, allowing it to fall in the ocean. And the more they cut loose the basket, and the more the items fell to the ocean, the higher the balloon got. And the balloon finally got to land. I believe that story is a profound picture of what God is trying to tell us. That if we're going to make it, we've got to get our priorities straight. They could have held on to their weapons. They could have held on to their shoes. They could have held on to their overcoats. They could have held on to their food. They could have held on to that which was under their feet. But they would have never made it to land.